It's quite it's quite more interesting for all of us, you know, to understand the discipline of sociology. By the way, I welcome you all. My name is Tabang Prituk Baloy, and I will be giving this mini lecture on what sociology is and what you'll be learning in the coming weeks as we unpack it. It's quite more interesting for one to understand it. Sociology is more of understanding the science of society, but it's also to understand the connection that society has, the how each one of the products that society produce affect one another. We gonna look at some of the theories, sociologists that came with the most, effective ways of understanding society at large, whether in medicine and family, any structure that exists in our society at large. It's quite more interesting that the likes of Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, Lenin, and Max Weber had an influence, even others in our modern day history that, influence or that had an influence in how we need to view sociology as a discipline and have a better understanding of, gender, religion, and so forth and so forth. And while touching on the sensitive topic of gender, while we understand the gender, sex, and gender roles, feminism as a structure, masculinity, how they really affected all of us and how it has changed throughout time, and not forgetting how we had to change from modernity. I want to start this lecture by talking about something important, which is what Cyril Mills in his book The Promise calls it sociological imagination. Of course, society as a structure has different dynamics that are too complex. You find a problem, you find a solution, you find all of these things that really can confuse you as a human being. At times, you cannot really understand why there's crime, why there's this and that. But sociological imagination helps us to understand the connections in society. In his book, Surat Mill talks about what men are in this day and age and how, for example, I'm going to talk about the sensitive issue of apartheid. We're looking at apartheid as a structure that left its cracks of apartheid. And as we can see today, there's unequal power distribution between races, there's inequality, there's poverty. And of course, since we have tried as human beings to fight with the unequal distribution of power within the workplace or wherever we can think of, but we never managed to finish it. It's because these cracks are so deep to a point that they can be transferred to another generation. You're thinking of generational wealth, you think of race, you think of color, skin color as a privilege to some. Of course, it's not to be discriminatory or to talk about it in such a way that you hating emotions, but just to understand how society at large is. Now, what sociological imagination does is like those lenses that make you understand the connection of various things in society and why they do exist and why certain things do happen and why they are like that. In most cases, the why is deeply found in what happened. Because for one to understand the present, one needs to go back in the history to dig in, or in the past to dig in and understand what was happening. Now, Cyril Mills had to make us understand that we are constructs that are constructed by society. And in society, we have different structures that reconstruct and deconstruct each other. We're thinking of a church as a structure. We're thinking of, a family. We're thinking of a school or just an environment at large. But the most important thing that you need to understand in the discipline of sociology is that we all influence one another. And that's what I had for us for today in this lecture on sociology, unpacking sociological imagination by Cyril Mills.